This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We're brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Monday afternoon. It's June 24th, and we got nothing but NBA draft in this episode. Tyler Metcalf from No Ceilings will join me to talk about a handful of different names that the Wolves might be considering at 27 and 37 in this week's draft. This episode is brought to you by Falling Knife Brewing Company, and it's going to be a summer week of hoops at Falling Knife. Tuesday night is the Commissioner's Cup with the Lynx playing the Liberty. That starts at 7 p.m. Great place for Lynx fans to gather for that. Wednesday night is round one of the NBA draft, which Falling Knife will, of course, be showing on the projector screens with the sounds on. And then if you want to get real crazy, Thursday night is round two of the draft. And remember that Falling Knife will be open for that as well. That round of the draft starts at 3 p.m. On Thursday, and Falling Knife will be open for Wolves fans to get together and watch that there. I know the Falling Knife guys are big fans of the draft, and they'll be fun to talk to over there. That's Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. And then we are also brought to you by Prize Picks. You can take a look at the Prize Picks spread for the Commissioner's Cup on Tuesday. And Ephesian Collier's number for points is set at more or less than 20. Brianna Stewart's is more or less than 19.5, more or less than 4.5 rebounds for Sabrina Ionescu, more or less than 5 assists for Courtney Williams. You can check that all out and many more things. Even got NFL stuff season long up there on Prize Picks. If you do check out Prize Picks, go to prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Use promo code DANE for a $100 sign-up bonus.
Hey, yeah.
All right, we are now joined by Tyler Metcalf from No Ceiling, someone I've gotten to know over the years at Summer League, but also because he covers Wolves games sometimes for Canis Hoopus at Target Center. Definitely one of the people I often text the whole, what do you think about this guy? Because I know you've actually watched them play. I can pull up the stats. I can see the 3-point percentage. I can even look up some numbers on Synergy. You know, those percentiles, they get a little wonky on there. With this stuff, to me, the biggest thing that matters is actually, taking the time to be able to watch them. That's something Tyler's doing, and everybody at No Ceilings over the course of 12 months. You guys are doing this year round. It's the end. The finish line is in sight here, man. I hope you're still having fun with it. I would assume you have a lot going on. How are you doing? Happy draft week.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is a weird one too. First of all, appreciate you having me back on. And we're not going to be talking about any superstar trades or anything, I don't think, like we did last time I was on here. It's a weird draft, man.
But what about once you're not, I know the top stuff is so weird.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously what we're going to focus on more here today is the Wolves range.
Yeah.
So I get why it's weird up top. Is it weird at the middle, at the bottom?
It's weird everywhere.
Okay.
Like there are probably about 10-ish names that are, kind of consistently in that top 10 range. Depending on who you talk to, they'll have a different top 5 every single time. Once you get outside the lottery, it is just a crapshoot. You'll talk to one scout who has someone in their 50s and you have them at like 18 and you're like, oh, that's fantastic. And then you'll talk to another team and it'll be the exact opposite. So it's really wide open this year. It's especially at the top. I think this is going to be one of the times where we kind of see teams draft more for fit than we kind of traditionally do, just because it is so flat and there isn't that clear cut franchise type of player. But there's always talent to be found in these drafts. So yeah, there's not a Victor Wembanyama in this draft, but there's never really been a Victor Wembanyama in any draft. So we've gotten spoiled, I think, these last 5 years or so, especially with guys, even like a Cade Cunningham and Luka Doncic. Like, these are legit franchise cornerstones. Anthony Edwards, obviously. So there's always talent to be found. You just have to find it. And the odds of it coming in the top 3 are probably a little lower this year than in previous years.
So, again, we're more going to do I don't know, maybe we could because I think there is a possibility the Wolves trade up, right? Like we can talk about the range all the way from, I think, late teens down to, 37, where the Wolves second round pick is there. I think there's like, from a Wolves perspective, right? There's kind of two different paths we can go down, because we're going to leave bigs out, I think, generally speaking. And there's the point guards, and then there's the wings, and there's different types of wings there. And I think obviously both of us watching the Wolves as much as we do can kind of envision all that on this team. But like you were saying, with the randomness of, what the scouts are telling you of different ranges for different players, I'm putting together a list of guys for us to talk to. And with some of the players, it's like, oh, here's Tyler Kolek at like 13 on somebody, and I'm, on somebody's mock or big board. I'm like, okay, that's not normally a player I would include that could be there at 27 or whatever. But I have kind of expanded it out there. I guess my main thing is, and I don't know this, this is me very much being the novice asking you questions, but I wonder, from, again, the point guards or wing standpoint, when you think about the 27 to 37 range, is that an area that would be more likely to pull a guard out of, a point guard out of, or a wing? Or is it like everything?
Right now, it's looking more like a wing. 2 months ago, before the kind of early entry withdrawal, it kind of looks like a range where you'd be like, oh, we might be able to kind of sneak away from this with an experienced point guard who's kind of ready to play now, who still has some positional size. And, when you look at the second round, there are some older guys who have either a glaring flaw or are small. We can get into names later, but after the withdrawal deadline, when guys like Mark Sears and Hunter Salas and even like a Xavier Lee and Peyton Sanford and Jameer Watkins, after they withdrew, is like, oh boy, this is getting pretty slim when we're looking for a backup point guard or anyone with on-ball equity or on-ball creation or shooting or, whatever. And it's like, oh boy. And the guys who were in that range are now sliding up to, top 25, top 20. Even earlier for some, because they're killing the pre-draft workouts. They're interviewing really well. And it's just like, they're kind of like a bona fide skill that they can point to, and they're ready to play. So it's like, all right, do I want one of those guys who, he might not have all-star upside, but I'm really confident he's going to be a top 7 guy in our rotation, if not next year, the following year? Or do I just want to take a big swing on this guy who he might be an all-star, he might not make it out of the G League by year 3. So it's really, really weird. And guys like Tyler Kolek, Baylor Scheierman, most of the year, they were kind of fringe first round, early second round guys, but they're interviewing well, they're working out well. And now it's like, I'm not sure they're going to be there at 25, let alone 27.
Okay. Well, I had Scheierman and Isaiah Collier as two people I for sure, wanted to get to. I've just heard Collier's name kind of bounce around in a few different places, so I'm gonna start there. And we don't have to do it all point guards at once. I'll do wings. We'll get to Scheierman after this and just kind of mix it from there. I'm looking at Collier again, looking at the numbers, and more so than I'm watching the film. If they draft him, I'll watch all of it. But I'm not going to do that with all these guys. So I'm watching bits and pieces here, and I'm seeing with Collier a physical force of a player, but that is also very small in terms of height and wingspan. And that is going to be, that's more survivable at the point guard position. How do you start thinking about Collier if you start with his physical, what he brings physically to the table? He's no shoes measured 6'2.5", standing reach 8'1.5", wingspan almost 6'5", and weight 205. There wasn't a lot of players that I could really find in recent drafts that were like that. Honestly, Monte Morris was one that came up, even though probably more like what Monte Morris is now after putting on some more, size and weight and muscle in his career. Other guys like Dante DiVincenzo, Miles McBride was another kind of similar body type guy. But what is the physical package here? Is it something we should be excited about, seeing that force from him that he brings when he's going to the basket, or do you have concerns about him from a size perspective?
My concerns with him, like from a physical standpoint, are the vertical explosiveness. Because like when you watch him drive and attack and get downhill, and he gets to the rim basically whenever he wants because he's got a really quick first step and he's incredibly strong, especially for his age. I mean, he is built. First time I saw him was Hoop Summit out in Portland last year, and during practice, during the game, he just got downhill whenever he wanted. You can't really stop him from getting to the rim. Unfortunately, everything is a below the rim finish. Like at the combine, his max vertical was the exact same as Tyler Kolek's. Not ideal stuff.
Right.
But, Kolek's another guy who first step gets to the rim a ton, and then you can create out of there. I think, what's so fun about Collier's kind of rim pressure is the playmaking out of it, where he's not just this one-dimensional guy like a lot of guys in this class where it's like, all right, cool. Like you get to the rim whenever you want, but if the defense rotates on you, like they tend to do pretty consistently in the NBA, can you find guys in the opposite corner out of that? Can you throw a lob? Can you dump it off to a, cutting big man? And he typically can. His playmaking out of those situations, going back to high school even, was really, really, really good. The finishing this year, inconsistent. I think he was like 55, 56% in the half court, which is okay. But then you look at some other smaller guards like a Jared McCain, and he's up over 61%. And it's like, okay, well, another below the rim finisher who is really strong, but has a lot more craft and creativity and has figured out ways to kind of compensate for the lack of explosiveness or strength. And a lot of Collier's kind of at rim finishing feels like he's always just been bigger and stronger than guys. And the touch isn't necessarily always there. The craft isn't always necessarily there. It can improve. And, the numbers weren't bad, but they weren't as good as you would hope from someone who gets to the rim as constantly as he did.
And he was a major focal point there, right? So as most of these guys who are point guards, but there was a lot just when I'm like ripping through some clips, it's like, okay, you go do something here. Nobody else is really going to, and that's just in general going to pull down some of those numbers there.
And that USC team was a dumpster fire. Yeah. Like the way they played, no one played together is all just kind of, it felt very much.
How much do you blame him for that?
That's the thing though, because a lot of their offense, like when the ball swings to them, it's catch, pause, survey, figure out something to do. It's the quick decision making, the processing speed. It was just slow, and so much of his game was, all right, let me catch, dribble back out, and we're just going to set up a pick and roll. It's like, all right, cool. Like this is awesome. Like the highlight tape is great because you're getting downhill all the time. You're making these wild kick out passes. The shot making in the highlight film is really impressive, but it's also super inconsistent. And when you watch the full game, it's like 10 possessions in between all of those highlights and a lot of standing around, a lot of inconsistent passing accuracy. The decision-making and ball security improved throughout the year, which is really good, especially when you come back from an injury like he did. But it was just so much inconsistency and just slow decision-making and processing offensively with him.
He reminded me a little bit of Jaden Hardy. In just that like getting downhill element of it, where it was like making the decision, I'm going to do it and I'm going to get there. Maybe that's just on my mind after obviously the Wolves last series was against the Mavs in that way. But then you did start to see him like be able to spray it around a little bit. He isn't just, so he does kind of fit the point guard mold, you would say, right? He comes in, he's going to, I mean, size wise, he kind of has to be a point guard.
He's 100% a point guard.
But defensively, there's things to be excited about in him, right?
Yeah, again, it's just inconsistent. And, right. And he wasn't a good defender in high school. I thought it got better this year. And he has the footwork and the strength that when he locks in, he can be a good defender. And he showed that in flashes here and there. But like a lot of young guys, especially guys who have always just purely relied on their physical skills, a lot of ball watching, off ball, a lot of missed rotations, a lot of just lack of effort. So I would classify his defense overall on the year as bad, but there were signs of optimism. At least it's like a point of attack defender. The screen navigation was tough. So like if, physically he kind of profiles as someone of, God, you could be kind of like a bulldog at the point of attack and really be disruptive and knock guys off their drives. But like, you compare the screen navigation between him and Nikhil. Obviously, Nikhil's fantastic at it, but it's night and day, where it's like he takes these like really rounded pass around screens, almost plays like he's afraid of contact, and he's strong and physical on the other end. So I don't think it's that.
That's kind of like Ant,
no
right?
technique.
Like Ant navigating screens in that sort of way. Where do you think he's gonna? Do you think it's reasonable that he could? I mean, because we're talking about a guy that at times there's been a lot of dudes whose name have been up there for like the number one pick, but like over the past 12, 18 months, like he's even had kind of came in as being a potential top pick in this draft sort of player. Are you seeing Collier as a guy that the Wolves would need to trade up from 27 for?
Probably a couple spots, but I think it's more reasonable that he's a legitimate option for them than, in January. Because like you said, start of the year, he was number one on some people's boards. I think he ended last high school season as the top recruit coming out of high school. Again, similar to this draft, there were like 8 different dudes who held that spot at whatever point in time. But sounds like he's not having an ideal pre-draft process. So he's one of these names where he could fall. And maybe he makes a lot of NBA teams look foolish and for overthinking stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like situation wise, like we saw with Jaden McDaniels in college, where it's like, God, this situation just sucked. Like, it was bad. And maybe, hopefully, for Collier's sake, that's the case with him. And he finds his footing and is able to kind of adapt and mold his game into more of a team concept. The raw skill and upside is fascinating. And if he's there at the late first round, it's like, why not? So I'm not entirely sure. I'd be kind of surprised if he fell all the way to 27, but early mid 20s kind of feels more like his range.
So the next player we're going to talk about is Baylor Scheierman, and this is just more like a curiosity or question I have for like approach and philosophy of somebody like yourself who's breaking down the draft. Is like what you are describing from Collier, Isaiah Collier, is a lot of what I'm listening to other podcasts and like, the wavering focus and navigation, a lot of things that sound like a 19-year-old.
Yeah.
But we, in this draft, have a lot of guys like Baylor Scheierman who are 21, 22, 23 years old, and that is just going to look different from an execution, a focus standpoint, all those sort of things. So how are you weighing the way you're evaluating prospects in this class, given this is probably the draft, I would assume, that you are evaluating the most older players that you have in a long time. And I would imagine it's easy to, if you're ripping clips of a Tyler Kolek or some other, junior, senior player, you're seeing a precision to it. And then you flip over to a 19-year-old. It's not going to be the same, same precision. Like how do you approach that when thinking about not just these players in particular, but this draft in general?
Yeah. And with this draft specifically, it's, if I did a big board specifically for like every single team, it would be incredibly different for across the board. Whereas, in past years, there'd be it'd be pretty similar throughout like the top 10 or whatever. Right. But this one's just so fit dependent. And it's one of those where it's like, if for these teams who have like 2 first-round picks, it's like, take a big home run swing on one of these guys, because someone's going to strike gold. And if you have 2 swings at it, why not? But like, if you're a contender or a fringe playoff team and you just need like some maturity, or even like a team like Charlotte, and you just need an adult in the room, like a Devin Carter, where it's like 6 feels kind of high for Devin Carter, but Devin Carter also rocks, and he's an adult and he plays his ass off. And it's like, he just kind of makes everyone better. So it's like, kind of want that. Like at a minimum, like he's going to be a really solid backup and an awesome locker room guy. So why not? And we kind of going back to Scheierman and Kolek. Like, I don't think these guys have the upside that a guy like an AJ Johnson or Trenton Flowers or Ron Holland or Isaiah Collier necessarily have. But I think their floor is substantially higher than where those guys are. And the feasibility of those guys hitting that upside, it's like, it's really skeptical. And a lot of things have to go right. Whereas some of these older guys, they might not be all-stars or, big time starters even, but I'm pretty confident they're going to be 20 plus minute a night guys.
It's just a different way to need to calculate, right?
Yeah.
For people like yourself, executives around the league, and more so than not ever, but more so than recently, weighing that upside versus likelihood of, kind of expected ability to deliver X, Y, or Z. Let me grab a break here real quick, and then we'll talk about Scheierman. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And this summer, YHIC is running a special on both bathroom and window remodels, whether it's a complete bathroom remodel or a tub to shower conversion. Your Home Improvement Company work is backed by a lifetime warranty. You can purchase with zero down, zero interest, and zero payments until 2026. Their summer window promotion is also going on, which is buy two, get two triple pane windows for free. These windows also come with a lifetime warranty and are installed by certified professionals. Again, zero down, zero interest, zero payments until 2026. Check out YHIC at yourhomeimprovementco.com, or you can call them at 866-777 YHIC, Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Today's show is also brought to you by the Autograph app. The Autograph app right now is full of all sorts of. I went to it earlier today for the Timberwolves community. Obviously, it's packed with draft content, different blogs, different articles written, all these videos. It's free. Download it in the App Store. Autograph App Store, Google Play Store. Use the code Dane Moore. Let them know you came from us. But it's just a place to consume all your Wolves content in one place, or different teams too. It's not just Timberwolves. You can, if you're a college basketball fan, football fan, whatever, just subscribe to those communities there and get all of your team specific content in one place. Again, that's the Autograph app. Download in the Google Play Store. You can scan the QR code on the screen if you would like, and use the referral code Dane Moore. That lets them know that you came from us. All right, Tyler, let's do Baylor Scheierman. This is very different sides of the spectrum with Collier at 19 and Scheierman at 23. Turns 24 years old before the season starts. My weird thing is I like to do these size comparisons, and I was going through, I'm looking for Baylor Scheierman. His height without shoes is 6'6", wingspan 6'8", weight 202, standing reach 8'6", which is almost the exact same as Troy Brown Jr. He popped because that old Wolves. You know what? They're less than a year apart in age.
Oh my God.
They're less than a year apart in age. Troy Brown Jr. is 24 years old right now. Scheierman is about to turn 24. Troy Brown Jr. has been in the NBA for 6 seasons.
It will never shock me how young he still is.
I know. He was kind of good, man. Honestly, and this is part I was thinking about, for Scheierman or just in general in free agency, that feels like, whether it's 8th in the rotation or whatever, even if it's 11th, again, kind of like Troy Brown Jr. was, that kind of feels like something that this team needs to add. So there's your one for Wolves fans. There's your size comparison. In more recent drafts, it's the Grady Dicks, it's the Sam Hausers, it's the Julian Champagnes for shooters, but more similar games to Scheierman. But also, he's big, man. He's the same size as Kenyon Martin Jr., same size as Brandon Clark, Kenrich Williams. Those are guys who play the 4. Kenrich Williams plays small ball 5. Clark does too. So there is to me, with shooters that are special shooters like Scheierman I've always started on the other side of the ball. I'm like, can you guard anything? And size always helps in that calculus. We saw that with Hauser through the playoffs in the finals. How are you approaching him as a prospect in this draft, given the age, given the size, obviously the shooting ability? There's a lot of game there. How are you thinking about him as a prospect?
I really struggled with him for most of the year because, I questioned some of the decision making and the shot selection. And it's like, man, none of this stuff is going to fly in the NBA because you're going to get the quickest bench ever if you start trying to do some of this stuff. But then you go back through it and you just kind of you pair some of the intel you hear, and he's had one of the, if not the best pre-draft process out of anyone in this class. You will not hear a bad thing about him. And, one scout even described his workout and his interview as like an all-timer for them. So it's like, all right, well, crap. All right, let me go back and dive back into some of this stuff.
But also, like, weird, the 24-year-old had a great interview.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, not to take away from it, but like, these are the things. Do we think Baylor Scheierman would have had an awesome interview at 19 and had an awesome pre-draft work? Like, I don't know. That's a factor.
No, for sure. But it also kind of caused me to just like, all right, let's go back. Let's rewatch 5 to 10 games of his, because all the numbers look
Just
really
a quick
good.
5-10 games.
Yeah, I have a problem. You don't want to see my game log. But then it's like, all right, so he's not going to have a massive usage like he did in college, where at South Dakota State for 3 years, he's this jumbo point guard. And at Creighton, he was this kind of dynamic wing creator. But it's like, all right, in the NBA, he's going to be a role player. And if you're getting a guy who can confidently and effortlessly launch from 3 like he does, who rebounds like he does, and then can move the ball and slash and create for others like he does as your 6th, 7th, 8th guy, that is incredible value. And that's the type of guy that where, for most of the year, I was like, I'll take a second round swing on him. But kind of reimagining what he can do in a different context, in a different role, it's like, this is a guy who's going to easily, I think, return first round value. And he's kind of like right in that middle of the first round range for me now. He's really funky. The kind of comp that I go to, it's not perfect. None of them are, but he feels like a blend. It's like if Sam Hauser and Kyle Anderson had a child, and here's Baylor Scheierman.
Dude, I know that child. It's Joe Ingles. That is Joe Ingles.
He
looks like Joe Ingles too, man. The way he plays, lefty too. Like,
yeah.
I mean, Kyle Anderson, you didn't get any of the shooting genes, but
exactly.
Yeah, it's that in between game. I mean, do you disagree with that? Like, again, you're watching all these games. I'm just ripping some clips, but that was the player I saw, particularly with those like lefty lobs he was throwing to. I'm blanking on their. Ryan
Kalkbrenner.
Yeah. Look at that. I got a name right. But like from the Rudy standpoint, like there was, I went in being like, okay, this is going to be a guy who in the NBA is going to be a shooter and like maybe be able to like take a dribble if he gets run off the line. But the college tape was a lot more, distributing and playing through the middle of the floor than you would maybe expect from just, the white shooter kid who's a senior. And that stood out to me some, even if like the athleticism wasn't there.
Yeah, and he's way more than just a shooter. The skill, the IQ, the creativity, even like for most of the year, I had concerns about the playmaking and decision making, but his assist rate or turnover rate this year was still under 15, which is fantastic, especially for someone with a usage of 25. And you mentioned the defense, and yeah, he's not a great athlete, but he's strong. He moves his feet well. He's almost always in the right position, and he's a really good defensive rebounder. So,
right.
4 straight years of a defensive rebounding rate of at least 24, which is fantastic, especially for his position. It's that kind of creativity and ball movement and shot making that the Wolves don't really have on their bench right now, out because they have a lot of solid play finishers, excluding Naz Reid, who can kind of get to his own spots. But on the wing or from their guards, they don't really have anyone who can consistently do that. And I think Scheierman can and has 5 years of doing it in college against various levels of competition.
So, particularly thinking about the age and the immediate pluggability, right, of not just Scheierman, but a handful of these other older prospects, I think a factor, particularly from the Wolves' perspective, that we have to consider is how cheap the contract is and how much that matters. Like, again, to the Troy Brown Jr. point last year, he signed a $4.5 million contract, right, to be an 11th man who didn't really play. Well, with the 27th pick, whether it's Scheierman or whoever, it's 2.25 next year. The year after that, it's 2.6. The year after that, it's 2.7, and the year after that, it's 4.9. Like, we're talking a 4-year, $12.7 million contract. And I think why I'm more opening myself up to the idea of taking the older player when I'm just in general, like philosophically going to be like, take the upside. I think we need to apply even a financial context here to this pick 27 in particular, or when you are if you are drafting a player to play now, because like it's sweet that Josh Minot's contract is nothing, like is tiny, but it doesn't matter if they don't. It doesn't matter unless they could come and play right away. If he can come in, if anybody can come here in at 27 and play right away and do so for basically the minimum, that's a major win from the Timberwolves perspective, not just for this season, but for the next 4, when this cap situation is only going to get more and more, strenuous in that sort of way. So I think as I was going through Scheierman, that part stood out to me. And like, even if it's just to be next season's 11th man, that matters, and then has the chance of like show something, be an elite shooter. Maybe this team is just desperately craving movement shooting like it was last year. Okay, here we go. 11th guy, go do your Troy Brown Jr. thing, like that one Oklahoma City Thunder game. Like, that stuff I think matters. It's not like a sexy first round pick,
right?
But there's to me, it seems like there's a chance for value there, immediately and over the course of the rookie contract.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest. Obviously, the on-court stuff, reigns supreme. But like Nikhil's value to this team this year and next year is because he's making like $4 million. I mean, he is so far outperforming that contract, and they're probably not going to be able to afford him when that comes due. So you have to find guys on the margins. That's what happens when you pay 3 guys what they're paying 3 guys. Where it's, I think you said the other day, like 90% of the cap or something is going to be tied up in those 3, and Rudy, Cat, and Ant, and those guys have earned their money, but that means you have to be
96%.
Oh, okay. Look at me lowballing them. But that just means you have to be absolutely perfect and find tenfold value in that other 4% of the cap. Obviously before you go over it, and hitting on guys late in the first is typically where the champion level teams do it. Like you look at the Celtics, Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard. Those are the type of guys who came off the bench, played big minutes, hit big shots, were really important to them all year, and they're making nothing.
Christian Brown a year ago with Denver too. Just to keep getting some more names in here, I'll let you fire off some. But another name I've heard is Terrence Shannon Jr. I haven't had the chance to dig in and watch any of that. Can you give me and the listeners an idea of what that would be? Maybe that he's another older player, almost 24 years old as well. Maybe more of a wing, but same sort of idea. Maybe it wouldn't necessarily need to be 27, could potentially be 37. Where are you at on him?
So for just applying a little bit of context to him, for most of the year, he wasn't on my board at all because he was going through a rape case. Jury just found him not guilty on that, so all charges cleared. Seems good to go. And NBA teams have seemingly had that kind of expectation for a while now. He'll probably be late first, especially now that all this stuff is legally cleared up. But kind of similar to Collier, where this dude just gets to the rim whenever he wants. He draws a ton of fouls. And the shot is kind of improved over his time throughout college, but it's still super inconsistent. I struggle with him because you look at the rim pressure, you look at the athleticism, the on-ball defense is really good. The playmaking is super inconsistent. The decision-making is super inconsistent. And for how much time he spent in college, it felt like he only got incrementally better every year. Like there was never that big leap that we were really waiting for.
Like you got from Scheierman this year.
Like you got from a Scheierman or even like a Tyler Kolek, and Shannon was dominant. If you look back at their tournament run, he was a huge reason for all of that. He was really, really good with Illinois. I'm just not sure how he translates to an NBA context because like the off-ball shooting's inconsistent. He doesn't really cut or relocate or move off ball much. When he gave it up at Illinois, he kind of just hung out because he had so much expectations on him when he did have the ball. And the on-ball threshold in the NBA is incredibly high, and I'm not sure he's going to be good enough to meet that. So if he's put in more of an off-ball role, does some cutting kind of emerge in his game? Maybe. Does, when he's not having to create so much and get downhill and draw a billion fouls every game, does he have more legs and the shot improves a little bit? Maybe. But it's kind of just an unknown for me right now. It's very different player than Nikhil, but you kind of hope that when you take away a lot of the responsibility and simplify his game, that's where that energy and that focus gets redistributed to some of those ancillary areas of his game with the, off-ball defense, the decision-making, the shooting. So I would imagine he goes in the 20s, late first, early second. I think he's worthy of taking a swing, but I don't think he's going to be playing. I think he's going to be having to play a very different role in the NBA than he did in college. And I'm not sure how feasible it is that translates seamlessly for him.
Well, we're going to get to someone you like or don't struggle with in this range, but I do want to cap that one. And I guess this applies to Collier too. Like, I do know the Wolves have had this desire for a player who has that like zip downhill and can get to the bucket, like the Jalen Noel thing of 2 years ago, but better. They've wanted that. They've been hungry for that, and they haven't had, the personnel on the roster for that. Tried Jalen Noel in that role. It didn't work 2 years ago. Tried Shake Milton in that role last season. He didn't deliver there. I mean, I don't think that is maybe, in the Wolves fan base or a lot of us who talk or write about the team as much on the forefront of our mind. I just know from press conferences and conversations I've had over these past few years, that's something specifically Finch wants in this offense. And, I think as we go into this draft and we think about, okay, this team needs a backup point guard. Sure. Yes. This team needs shooting. Those are the more obvious things for us on the outside. That's an internal desire that I as I understand it, that this team has. And there are a handful of players in this draft who provide that, but have a lot of the questions that you said. Like, a lot of those that archetype of player comes with questions coming out of college in terms of how does this translate, because you need to be able to get buckets at a really high rate. And that's a really hard thing to do individually, create the advantage and take advantage of it on your own. So anyways, who is a player more in this range, guard, wing, whatever, that you like? You don't sit there and look at and go, I struggle with the value of them at 27. Not a good voice. That's not what we want, Tyler.
No, I think a sneaky name to keep an eye on is Enrique Freeman. He played center at Akron, but more of a power forward. I think he measured in at like 6'8". Another one of these really late risers.
Okay.
Better rebounding numbers than Zach Edey in college. Multiple time conference or defensive player of the year. Really high level passer for his position too. Some interesting ball skills. Fantastic team defender. Some defensive versatility. Obviously, don't want him switching on guards, but you get it.
Again, little slow-mo-y, right?
Exactly. So if you're thinking, all right, Kyle Anderson's out the door, can't retain him, he's not coming back. Enrique Freeman kind of feels like a solid replacement if like a Scheierman's already off the board, if he's not gettable. Freeman was initially not even invited to the combine, went to the Portsmouth Invitational, played really well, earned a G League Elite Camp invite, played really well, earned a combine invite, played really well. From what I was told, he's still working out for teams in the 20s, and his range kind of keeps shifting higher and higher by the day. So his range is probably that 25 to 40, 45-ish range. So late first, early second, but teams seem to be really intrigued with him.
Interesting. I'm just kind of looking at boards and stuff. I had just seen his name, but a little bit lower there. But it sounds like, particularly in this draft, if ever there was a time where a guy might be on somebody's board in the 50s or 60s, and all of a sudden they go at, 37, 27, it'd be this year. And that one's good too, to like put in the bucket getter. If that's a desire for this team. And I think the forward, the team defender who with a little bit of passing chops, the Kyle Anderson thing, that would be a need on this team if Kyle Anderson doesn't return there. I probably should have my mind a little bit more open to like quote unquote forwards.
Well, and the tricky thing with Freeman too is like he never shot it in college until this year. But this year was the first time he ever shot it, got up to like 36, 37% on like 70-ish or 60-ish attempts. But in the last couple of months, he's still working on his form, and these workouts can be always a little tricky, but he shot really well at the combine. I was told that with the team workout the other day, he shot nearly 70%, or hit like 70 out of 100 threes in their workout. So it seems like it's something he's really working on and really improving. But still kind of a hypothetical.
Okay. I'm going to be watching. I need to, it's just too many guys, particularly in this range to even, be able to dig in deep on. I have another, we talked about Collier, who is a point guard. Sounds like KJ Simpson is more of like a pure point guard, and maybe a lot in the Mike Conley mold of a lead guard. What have your thoughts been on him?
Incredible growth this year at Colorado. Really just one of the most fun offensive guards in the country. Another guy who played really well at the combine, where he just looked like he was too good to be out there with most of those guys. Very quick, versatile scorer. I've heard questions about his playmaking, but it's always tricky when guys who are smaller like that, right, and they just have that one big jump in shooting improvement. And it's like, like how real is this? Because like we saw with Davion Mitchell,
it looks good though.
It looks good, and the variety, the difficulty level of his stuff, is off the bounce, is off the catch, is spotting up. There's a lot of versatility and NBA range from it. So I'm optimistic, but he's not going to give you anything on defense. The playmaking is okay. But if you just need a spark plug backup point guard scorer, you're looking at probably more that 37 pick with him, I think. But there aren't many better options in terms of the point guard pull at that point.
Can I ask you a question? Just this is in general about scouting and shooting in particular in what you guys do, assessing prospects, or just in general, and what I feel like we all do. It's just interesting to me how much we use 3-point percentage, right? Like, I'm actually serious about this. I think we've gone way too far with that, particularly in draft content, as it being like a grade. And people like yourself who are watching these players all the time, why is there a resistance to not just you decide how good of a 3-point shooter they are based on what you see of them shooting? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
rather than
because technically the answer is sitting there for you. I don't always agree that answer is correct. But whether you like it or not, they're results, and that's what that number is. Unfortunately, that's all it is. It doesn't apply context to the difficulty or the distance or the types of shots they're taking, or what are the improvements or what are the mechanics like. But technically, it is a black and white answer of how good of a shooter are you. Like Baylor Scheierman this year was like a 37, 38% 3-point shooter. He's a better shooter than that because he's launching from freaking 40 feet half the time.
Right. And so I think normally where I would push back on it, it's like a guy who shoots even worse than that. It's like 30, I don't have somebody off the top of my head here, but shoots 32, 33% for a season in college. And it's just like, questions with the shot. Like that's not always the case, right?
Like Steph Simpson Castle at the top.
Yes.
Like Steph Castle. He's in high school, he was like mid 30% 3-point shooter, but there was like pick and roll pull-up stuff. There was NBA range stuff sprinkled in. And this year with UConn, he was just a role player on offense, and he was taken completely off ball for most of the year, and he shot sub 30%. And it's like, okay, that's bad. But you look at guys of his caliber, of his size, who go in the lottery, it's pretty rare that they don't at least get to like a career 35%. And when you're doing all the other stuff that he does, that's fine. And I don't know. I agree with you that too frequently we get hung up on what is the raw percentage, because they're very different. Like,
well, we do that in the NBA too, to be clear.
Oh, for sure.
And the problem though I have with that is the NBA one's at least a better representation because it's a larger sample size. Like the amount of times I've heard it be referenced, like what Matas Buzelis shot in high school, I'm like, cool. Like, I don't care. I don't, that doesn't like move the needle for me a ton. If in 26 high school games you shot it well or shot it poorly, like I don't know. And I just hear these things pointed to all the time, and both ways. Like it sounded like what you were saying with Simpson was like, this was his first year he ever really shot it at what was he, like 44%, right, at Colorado this year?
Yeah, something like that.
Like, so that sounds awesome. But we've seen other players have one really good shooting year and that, not actually be a representation of it. So I do think, again, from the little I've watched with him, it looks like a shot that is repeatable and could go in. And I just think, I haven't done the work to do this with these prospects, but in general, I just feel like all you guys like need to like stand on that like a little bit more. Like, I've seen what this player looks like when they shoot a lot, and I think the numbers don't represent it, or the numbers do represent, or the other way. It's just, it seems like it's just getting crazy to me with this.
Well, and
it's not an attack at you by any means. I know you are actually watching, but just kind of over the last week or so consuming this stuff fast. It's like, man.
Yeah. Well, because, at this time of the year, especially, the vast majority of people are cramming and they're not watching all year. And then that's not an indictment or really like, oh my God, look at me.
Oh yeah. No, hand raised.
It is what it is. The NBA gets more eyes for a reason. But like the whole narrative with Steph Castle of, oh, he's going to suck because he's not an awesome shooter. It's like, I think he's going to be fine. Guys his size who do the different things he does, it tends to work out in some form or fashion. Right. Zachary Reese-Shea, another one who for the first 70% of the season was shooting 47% from three. He's never shot it well in his life. And then he has a month stretch of shooting it poorly, and the percentage drops to a horrid 38%. And people are like, it was all fake. It was all fake. And like the first 50 games and 180 attempts were fake. Really? And then he ends up with another strong month to finish off the year, and he's back up to 39.7% on 270-ish attempts over 65 games. It's like, this is more than double the type of sample we get from any college player. So look at the attempts. What's the difficulty like? Is he doing it off movement? Where did it improve from the previous year? And are we actually taking steps in the right direction? And are there indicators that this is real? On that type of volume for Reese-Shea specifically, I tend to believe that it's real. When we look at like KJ Simpson, jumped up from 27.5% from three last year to 43.5% this year. Huge jump. But we also see that trending upwards in like the free throw numbers, which went from 77 to 82 to 88%. And free throw percentage is typically a pretty strong indicator of touch and shooting. So I tend to believe that KJ's shooting improvement tends to be real.
I just think watching guys shoot is a pretty good indicator too.
Yeah.
Like
the mechanics look good.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss some of those too. Like obviously, like on the Wolves, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I never would have, when he came here, I would have never believed that he would be the quality of shooter that he's became. It goes both ways. I remember like the one draft I actually dug into because it was a pandemic and was watching all these guys, maybe not quite as much as you, but a lot of them was like Tyrese Halliburton. I'm like, no way, man. No way. Really? I was like, no way that shot's is gonna work. And, so we're wrong here too. And I think we're often wrong with that, but it's just, I don't know. Maybe I've just seen a lot of funky shooters in Minnesota over the years. Okay, quickly, let's give me a couple more guys that you like from a Wolves perspective in that whatever 27-37 range.
Yeah, a couple other guard names to keep an eye on. AJ Mitchell from UC Santa Barbara, Jalen Tyson from Cal, Jamal Shead from Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Shead is arguably one of the smartest and best defenders in this entire class. Just
these are all like second round point guards, right?
Yeah,
early second,
like early second. Might have to go late first.
Okay.
If you like a guy, you just kind of take him. Thing with Shead, smaller, has never really shot it. Sorry to go back to the 3-point percentage, but he's never been a good shooter. The defense is insane. Some of our guys at No Ceilings did a film breakdown with him too. They said he's one of the smartest guys they've ever talked to and broke down film with. And you will not hear a bad thing about him. The intel is off the charts with him. It's just at 6'1", 6'2", can you really be that awesome of a defender in the NBA, especially if you're not shooting? So that's where my hang up is. AJ
Can I ask you one question? Yeah, can I ask you one question on just that kind of archetype? Because there's a handful of guys like that. And we could even kind of put Collier in it if we believe in the defensive development of just the short but point of attack sort of defender. I mean, the Wolves have that in Jalen Clark to some extent. And even, like Wendell Moore Jr. is like that sort of size. And theoretically that we haven't got to see these players play. Dacian Nix is another guy like that where they're kind of stout, but like even when I was looking at like Collier's size, it's like Jalen Clark's a lot bigger than him, and a couple inches taller, longer wingspan in that sort of way. So just from a Wolves perspective, do you think it is worth the investment, even if it's 37, in kind of getting like Jamal Shead, like that type of player, if you do have Jalen Clark, sitting there on a two-way as well?
Probably not, but it also depends what they're doing with McLaughlin and Monte Morris. And it's like if they don't bring them back and they just and they don't think that Jalen can really run any backup point or Nikhil can effectively do what they want in that spot, then a guy like Jamal Shead, who's a really good decision maker, he's not going to make mistakes. He's not really going to give you much of anything besides just sound decision making on offense. But you also know that even though he is smaller, the defense probably isn't going to hurt you either. So,
yeah, it is funny for like how straightforward the Wolves offseason is, how much it feels like it ties to the draft. You know what I'm saying? Like if Morris and McLaughlin are out, like you better take a point guard here, with one of them, right?
Yeah.
Or if Kyle Anderson is out, it's like, I guess, because where the Wolves are drafting 27-37, that's where you're probably trying to get like hit on an 8th, 9th, 10th guy. And those are your 8th, 9th, 10th guys. So but if all of them are back, does that change? It's an interesting wrinkle in this. Okay. Give me AJ Mitchell.
Really physical, kind of dynamic creator. The outside shot just hasn't ever consistently been there, but he's been a really good mid-range scorer, really good at rim finisher. Another one of these guys from a smaller mid-major, and you never really get a whole lot of that competition against really good teams. So it's like, how real is this? But then if you go back and watch him at the combine, he looked fantastic. It was the best his defense has ever looked. The playmaking, the physicality is like, where was this always? And because, at Santa Barbara, it's a really good, it feels like it could be a really good case of this guy wasn't that great on defense in college because he had to do everything on the offensive end. And then when those responsibilities are kind of reined back and he's not having to do everything and can show different parts of his game, that's where the dirty stuff like the defense really starts to pop. So I think he's really intriguing. And then Jalen Tyson's probably the other name that I would guess a lot of Wolves fans have been intrigued by. Really bad Cal team this year, but he had to do a lot. It's kind of some fun, funky on-ball creation. The shot has steadily improved year over year, not to outstanding levels, but to competent levels. Good positional size, probably more of a combo guard than like a true point guard. Have some worries about the at rim finishing consistency. But again, it was a really bad Cal team, and he was the focal point of the offense. So that just inevitably draws so many more help defenders. But those would be like four more kind of guard oriented names.
Okay. No, I like that. Appreciate that. I need to dig into some more of those guys a little bit more. If using what we kind of understand about these ranges, and given what you do understand about the Wolves, what is it? Let's assume they stay at 27 and 37. What are two names you would like to have them come out of the draft with there?
Ideally, if they could get one of Tyler Kolek or Baylor Scheierman, I don't think they would drop into 27, but I think that'd be a home run for either of them.
Okay.
And and then like an Enrique Freeman, Jonathan.
That's your guy. So Freeman's your guy.
I really like him. I'm buying in. The rebounding numbers have been so dominant for like 3 straight years. And that's something that always translates. The team defense was fantastic. Love the passing, love the ball skills. And I tend to believe that the shot's going to be competent. And if he can, knock down corner threes at 38%, sign me up.
We didn't do Kolek that much. Let's give me your Kolek thoughts before we call it here.
Just a dog. I know that's lame, but funky lefty, gets downhill whenever he wants, and then just manipulates the defense at will with his playmaking, incredible vision. I think when he drove to his left, he's a lefty, but when he drove to his left, he shot like 71%. Pretty good. The pull-up shooting numbers were oddly bad, like 36%, give or take, but spot up, he's like 42 to 44%. So when just thinking in like a Wolves context, can collapse the defense, get to the rim, throw lobs, dump off passes, kick outs, but then also play off ball and be that spot up shooter, kind of a la Mike Conley.
Sure.
Not much of like a pick and roll pull up threat, on ball scoring, perimeter scoring threat, but ball swings, Ant kicks out to the corner, kicks above the break, second, third swing pass. He's going to knock it down more often than not. And then defensively, he's not going to give you much, but he's really smart, and his defensive playmaking numbers were really solid. So that the hands, the rotations, the kind of anticipation is there. It's just the on-ball stuff. He's going to get exposed, but so have a lot of Minnesota's point guards on that end. So I feel like they kind of have the situation to insulate a lot of those guys.
That's big.
I don't worry too much about that.
Tyler, let's tell people a little bit about what you guys are doing at No Ceilings. I purchased their draft guide. It's up on the screen here if you're watching on YouTube. I love the format of it. It looks like an old like newspaper sort of brochure thing that 20 years ago we would have bought like at a stand and just like devoured it before before the draft. I bought it, downloaded it this week, and I had a couple flights. Also, by the way, you told me to watch the Creighton UConn game for Scheierman, and Scheierman was out in foul trouble.
Did he not play in?
No, he played it. I think I did the wrong game. They played each other twice. I was watching it, but then Alexander, the
Trey, he's intriguing.
He's in this range. Tyler is my person where I just have no idea what I'm looking at, and he directs me in the right direction. But anyways, this at No Ceilings, it's what we're recording this late afternoon on Monday, and if you're just trying to jump in and get all of these players. What is it? A couple hundred words on every player.
It's like 350 words on everyone. It's a total of over 18,000 total. Strengths, weaknesses, background, advanced stats, comps.
It's perfect if you're coming at it from where I was coming at the draft this year, of just having not really had the chance to watch a lot of these guys, and I now feel somewhat up to like what the names are called on draft night. I'm going to have a point of reference off that. The No Ceilings guys do a great job. I mean, in all their content in addition to this, I'm a year-round subscriber, if not a year-round draft reader of your guys' stuff. And I love this. This was the one draft thing that I bought to get myself up to date here. So you can go to No Ceilings. You're following the many Tylers at No Ceilings over there. If you can follow Tyler Metcalf here at T Metcalf 11, and then what you guys have done with a lot of those film breakdowns that you referenced, you can find that on their pages there as well. I'm really impressed by what you guys have been able to do over these past few years to really bring yourself to the forefront of the draft conversation. And I know just from talking Wolves with you and such over the years, you got a great eye for this stuff, and dum-dums like me need it, man. So thank you very much.
No, I appreciate the support, and you can find all that stuff over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. We try and keep most of what we do free for everyone. So if you can't support us, the draft guide's a great way to do that. If you want exclusive articles and access to our Discord and some other bonus stuff, we've been sharing a ton of intel over on the Discord. There is a paid tier over on Substack. If you can, awesome. If not, we get it. Money's money.
Man,
but appreciate it.
I operate in the same world, man. It's we appreciate the support. There's a million different things to get into, but yeah, it's flattering, right? When people give you the attention that you feel like your hard work maybe deserves. And yeah, for whatever I'm worth, I vouch for these guys, and just have had some fun draft conversations as I start nerding out at Summer League. I'll be bothering you guys all more too. Thank you for coming on today, and maybe we'll get you back on here after the draft once we know which one of these weirdos end up on the Timberwolves. Thanks, Tyler.
Happy to do it.
He's Tyler Metcalf. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at TMetcalf11. I think next up is going to be on Wednesday night. Round 1 is on Wednesday night. Kyle Tigey and I will just jump on and give our sort of immediate reactions. I'll be at Target Center that night. We'll talk to Tim Connolly afterwards and get his thoughts on whoever the Wolves walk away with that 27 pick, or maybe if they trade up, they do have the 2031 pick that they can trade to. So we'll see whatever happens to the Wolves on draft night. Kyle and I will be there to talk about it late on Wednesday night. Until then, he's Tyler. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.